Hello class, the purpose of this video is going to be to review factoring trinomials. That's an important skill when we get to evaluating limits algebraically. But the first thing I want to talk about is FOIL. FOIL is basically distribution. The first letter F stands for first, so you would be multiplying the first term times the first term, and in this case 3x times 2x is 6x to the second power. You then would multiply 3x times -5, which would give you -15x. And then the inside, so that's the outer, the 3x and the -5. The inner is the 2 times 2x. That, of course, is 4x. And finally, L stands for last. The last term of each binomial gets multiplied. So 2 times -5, -10. And combining like terms, you get 6x squared. Then you got to combine these in the middle. We're not multiplying, we're just combining. So -11x and then -10. So basically what we've done is distribute. Every single term in the first binomial gets multiplied by every single term in the second. Well, when you're factoring, what you're really doing is working backwards. So you will see, let me write that down, factoring here. We are reversing the process of distributing. So in factoring, you're going to start with this guy right here. Okay, and your job is to essentially revert back to the factored form. And a factored form is called factored because you're multiplying two things that result in that polynomial. So if we start with 6x squared minus 11x, and there's various methods of doing this. This is the one that I've always used. It's just quicker than other methods, but there are others out there. You want to go ahead and start, some people call this the double bubble. You want to go ahead and start with your parentheses, and because you know it's going to result in binomial times a binomial. And the first two things that you write in each set of parentheses have to multiply to 6x squared. So, I mean, it could be 3 times 2, it could be 6 times 1. We really don't know. That's why this method is called trial and error. So we would just start with, say, 3x and 2x. I'm just guessing. And I'm assuming here that I've never even seen this work that's going on up here. But I'm just guessing 3x and 2x. The next thing that needs to happen is you look at the last term. I notice that it is a negative, so automatically I know that there has to be a positive and there has to be a negative because a positive times a negative results in a negative. Now, I don't know which one is which, but at the end when I'm checking, I will certainly be able to figure out if I put them in the right spot. So what I want to do now is come up with two numbers that multiply to 10. And so it could be 10 times 1 or it could be 5 times 2. And we really don't know what numbers we're going to use. But you just kind of, again, trial and error. I'm going to go with 2 and 5 just because I think that's what it is. Well, I mean, I know that's what it is, but I'm just guessing here. Again, remember, I've never seen this work up here. Now, one little clue I want to give you is that whenever you place these in the parentheses, you should never be able to factor a factor from the two things in those parentheses. For instance, since I have a 2 here, I would not be able to put it in this set of parentheses because now there's a 2 that can be factored. I've created a GCF, a greatest common factor here, other than 1, and that's not allowed. So that tells me right away that 2 does not fit in this set of parentheses. So I'm going to put the 2 on this end. That leaves the 5 here. And so now all I have to do, I'm going to change colors here. All I have to do now is verify that in fact I have everything I need. And I know that the first times the first does in fact give me 6x squared. I also know that the last times the last gives me -10. So the last thing I have to check is the middle term. If I multiply these, I get 4x. And if I multiply the outside, I get -15x. If I combine those, I get -11x. And that should be the middle term. And it is. So that tells me that I have factored this correctly. So that's basically what I do. If, for instance, the signs were off, I might try switching the signs. If I don't get that middle term, you might want to try a set of different factors. It's just trial and error. So you keep going until you get one. Okay, so I have another example here. This time I haven't seen the answer. So we're just going to kind of try to work it out with the method I told you. So again, some people call this double bubble because you just start with this generic set of parentheses. And you want to make sure that the first two things you write in each of the parentheses multiply to 15x squared. So more than likely that's going to be 3x and 5x probably. And then I look at the last term. Since it is a negative, I know one of these is positive, the other is negative. If this last term were a positive and everything's positive, then I know everything in my parentheses has to be positive. If, for instance, the last term is positive but the middle's negative, then that tells me that I have to have both of these negative in order to result in a positive last term but combined to a negative middle term. So you just kind of look at the signs and decide what you want. And lastly, I've got a 4 here, so I've got to decide whether that's going to be a 1 times 4 or a 2 times 2. Now, most people go with 2 times 2. And I check, does putting a 2 here give me a common factor other than 1 with 3? It doesn't, so it's fair game. If I put a 2 here, does it give me a common factor with 5? It doesn't, so it's also fair game. And so now I just got to check, and I'll switch colors here and make sure that everything's good. So the first times the first, that's 15x squared. The last, that would be 2 and negative 2, that's negative 4, that's good. So I'll check the middle, that's 10x, and the outer, that's negative 6x. And if I combine those, I get 4x. Well, 4x is in 17x, so that's problematic. That means I haven't factored this correctly. Now, I don't think it's going to make a difference if I change this to a positive and this guy to a negative. So that's now, this is now a negative and this is a positive. All that's going to do is give me a negative 4x, and that's still not 17. So that tells me that this set of factors is probably not the right answer. So I'm going to go back and try the same factoring, this time with a positive 4, with a 4 and a 1. Okay, so I'm ready here. I'm going to go ahead and try a 1 and a 4. Again, I know that one of these is positive and one of them is negative. Still not sure which one is which. 1 can be in either spot and 4 can be in either spot. None of them create that GCF situation. So I'm just going to throw these up here and see what happens. My next step is to check. Again, I don't have any real reason to believe that this is correct. I just know that 2 and 2 didn't work. But now I just got to check and make sure that my order is working. So if I multiply that, that's 5x. If I multiply the outer, then that's going to be negative 12x. Well, that's not really working. That gives me negative 7x. So I'm going to go back and try. Maybe if I change the signs, that's not really going to give me what I want either. So I'm just going to change the order. I'm going to make this the 4, and I'm going to make this the 1. Just right on top right there. So in doing that, I think that should give me what I need, or close to what I need. Let's see. It's my pencil. So let's see, this is now going to be 20x, and then the outer is going to be negative 12x. Sorry, negative 3. Negative 3. That's a 1 now. Sorry, that's a 1. So it's negative 3. So if I combine these 20x minus 3x, that's going to give me 17x. And that's in fact what I have here in the center. So that tells me that my final answer must be 3x plus 4 times 5x minus 1. So this is a trial and error method. Most of the times the things that you're going to factor, it just takes a couple tries and you're there. Hardly ever do you have to factor a polynomial that has like a 96 up front. I would have a credible number of factors, and that would take a while. But usually it's something that, doesn't, maybe has about 4 factors to work with. So usually you get it right on the first try. But that's really it. And just practice, practice, practice until you develop a really good sense of what things might be. And you always check your inner and your outer, make sure it combines to the middle. And that's about it.